go ahead and get started. The copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the wall over there. If we could go around and introduce ourselves. Mary Ann Borgeson, County Board.
Mark Kraft, County Board.
Diane Carlson, County Administration.
Toby Chola, Board Capital.
David Levy here representing Omaha Housing Authority.
John Christensen, Building
Joe Lorenz, County Finance Director.
Very good. Spectator. County Commissioner. Ben Gray, Spectator. Ben Gray, Omaha City Council.
Joel Peterson, Legal Counsel. Don Norman, Burlington Capital.
David Lemke, HDR.
Kevin Augustine, HDR.
Wade Gehring, HDR.
Dr. Bloomingdale, County Administrator. DNS, County Clerk.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of our minutes from our March 21st meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Any board comments? Item 2 at this time. I will just announce, and there's flyers here, that there's 3 public forums that are set up on May 6th, 7th, and 9th. May 6th is at the Salvation Army Omaha Croc Center at 2825 Y Street, 6 to 7:30. Tuesday, May 7th is at St. Robert's at 11802 Pacific from 6 to 7:30. And Thursday, May 9th is Metro Community College North Omaha Fort Campus at 5300 North 30th. And it's from 6 to 7:30. And we do have flyers for those if anyone wants to take one. So today on the agenda, we will give another design update, and we will start with Mr. Bruce Carpenter.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I think most of the people in the audience today have seen a presentation of the design and where things are at. We can go through it fairly quickly and then have more of an open discussion and answer any questions that the board members may have or anyone in the audience may have. And we do have detail kind of the process that we work through in any design of the project that we do. So some of this will be information that you've seen before, and we'll go through that relatively quickly and then have an open discussion if that's okay. Yep. The one thing to understand about what we're trying to achieve is, and one of the guiding principles that you'll see in our design is transforming the juvenile justice system. There's been a lot of work done on programs throughout the juvenile justice system to improve the current process and to continue to make improvements. We all know that alternatives to detention, JDI, is something that the county's been a member of for many years and has made great progress over several years. We need to continue that and continue to improve. And so the programs that surround what we see as the design and being in the center, and the building and the complex, the Justice Center that we're developing, being central to all of the programs. And the co-location, the idea of things being co-located, all of these services being accommodated in a space need, and in particular reducing one of the most traumatic experiences that kids have, which is the transfer from the current center to downtown. That's a change in the trauma or traumatic experience, but it also then creates opportunity for more efficiency. So if understanding that the kids that are in detention are not sentenced to be there for any period of time, but are there because they're waiting on process. They're waiting for a court date. They're waiting for psychiatric evaluation. They're waiting for things to happen. So the idea of having it all co-located and creating efficiencies allows that time frame to shrink, and so the kids don't need to be in detention as long. We're providing services. A lot of this is good work that the county board has been involved with, and also organizations in the community that understand the change in the legislative bill that goes into effect, I think, July 1st this year, LB 1112. So Child Savings Institute is making some improvements. There's discussion with Omaha Home for Boys in providing new services. Utah Haley, I think those were stand up the end of April. 16 new beds for girls. The UNMC agreement with the county on mental health services, I think, is going into effect this week or in the next couple weeks. And then that's one of the first things we heard. There weren't enough services from psychiatrists to do evaluations, and so this is a really big deal in addressing those needs, and again reducing the amount of time that kids are in detention, or maybe providing evaluations that help them stay out of the detention in the first place. It's also ongoing services, so having all of these services co-located, even once the kids are out of detention, or if they're not in detention and they're in probation, all of the family and services for the kids are in one location. We talked about the policy, the LB 112. And then two things, two organizations that can help, one with the data management. It's actually someone that Marianne brought to the table, and there was a conversation. Understanding the data and being able to manage that data will help reduce, identify which kids are in detention, why they're in detention, once they're out in the community, what's taking place. So it's about data, but it's a really important element to understand, and something that the county can use more help in developing and setting up a program that can be used in the future. And then the Burns Institute regarding the racial and ethnic disparities that we know exist, and they do this nationally to help understand what's going on in a particular community. And I think it's a learning experience for anyone that gets involved. It includes attorneys, judges, public defenders, probably this board, the county board members, and identify where the issues. It puts a highlight on what's happening so that we can begin to address those issues. So this is not the design of the building that we're here to talk about, but this informs the design and why we made the decisions we've made. And the big key is that if we can get co-located services, we can reduce the time that kids are in the system and improve their experience in the system. So feel free to ask questions too as we go along. I think this is a small enough group that we can address those. So the guiding principles are the same as they were from the start of the project. Obviously, the courts need more space, and we've met to understand space needs and have provided solutions for expanding the juvenile courts, fitting up 6 with 2 the space for 2 future courts that could be fit up and at a later date. improving the juvenile justice system. The previous slide was all about the entire system and how to improve that. From a design aspect, we'll talk about that a little more in detail. And then this is a civic building, and we want it to inspire civic pride. We've had some smaller group discussions on design and what that means, and what we look to address is what's current culture today. This is a building that will be here for hopefully another 50 years, and where is the future going in architecture, and how do we represent the community? It's different. When the Hall of Justice was built in 1916, that was a different culture. So we try to address what's currently going on in the culture as much as we can, and leaning forward to where culture's headed, because the people that will use this building are the kids that are teenagers today, but adolescents, even younger kids in the future. Some of them, haven't been born yet, that will be using this. So that's really what we're gearing towards. I think, we all have a collective knowledge, but we aren't going to be here for most of this building's life, and we need to understand that. So.
Why?
Maybe some of us will be. So the simple elements, our new judicial tower that's 140,000 square feet. We have space for community programs in that building. This will be a secure facility with, just like the current Hall of Justice, as you come in the door, there'll be a checkpoint to address security. There's support elements for the court, public defender and county attorney, and 6 courtrooms, as we talked about, plus space for 2 future courtrooms. Last fall we kind of held on completing the schematic design, but we're near the end of schematic design, and when we move to the new site, there's some changes that we'll work through before we have a final sign-off by all the departments. And I say that because we're showing in the next category, with the availability of MUD, we have probation and a bulk of the community services. That will have a little less security and easier for kids and family to move in and out of. There's still a connection to the judicial tower, so that the probation officers can have an easy access to the courts and to the attorneys and in the tower. And then the youth center is 60,000 square feet, and now in the budget is included to fit that up for 64
Can I
beds.
make a comment?
Yes.
I'm glad you said the access will be easier. There won't be quite as much security. That'll save the county money. That'll save the individual families time and grief trying to get in.
Right.
So I'm very pleased to hear that.
Good. Yeah. And that was the idea, that it's more accessible for the family.
Much better than the previous plan.
Okay. That's good. And then a skywalk connection between the tower and the Hall of Justice, so the public defenders and county attorneys can move quickly to the courts in the Hall of Justice, those that need to have access. And again, that's a secured access for those individuals. The new site that is now acquired, the bonds are sold, have been approved. So this shows MUD on the northwest corner, on the upper left, the new tower on the upper right, and then the youth center on the south side on Howard, with a nice public court in between the MUD building and the tower, and then the blue is the link to the Hall of Justice to the north. So I think creating an outdoor court, a public court, is a nice gesture. When we design buildings, we think of the experience from when they come on, when the people that are coming come onto the site. In this case, the kids in the family come onto the site, and that's begins what we call their arrival sequence of events, and kind of begins to set their frame of mind. In this case, we want to make it calming. They're usually in a stressful situation as they come to a building. You know, we might be more familiar approaching the courthouse. It may be more intimidating for kids, for younger kids, and for families. So this is kind of the first element where we begin to set the tone.
Right.
Patrick?
I don't know. You take.
Yeah.
Take input from
I think it's okay. We're a pretty small group, unless Mary Ann.
No, that's fine.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
Where is the parking garage located? I didn't see that in the rendering.
That's not part of
Yeah,
this project.
it's off to the left. The existing parking garage is north of the Civic Center across the street.
The existing one, but where's the new parking garage going to be?
There's that would be a public building commission project, but there has been discussion in this lot that's now owned by the county, which is across 18th Street. There's also development being planned to the south, so there's been discussion with the city on a joint parking facility, but it would be within a block. And I didn't bring it. We've done studies of current distances at 42nd Street in that parking to the door, and the same distance studies from either one of these locations to the door, and I think we're within 250 feet. Kevin, I'm looking at Kevin. So we've done those distance studies.
But you don't have where the parking garage is going to be.
It's not our project.
It's not decided yet, and it's a shorter construction time frame, so it can still be decided with if the development to the south moves forward or the property that the county currently
But
owns.
it is important to note that's a separate project. It's
Right.
not part of this project.
And Bruce, there is a walkway between the MED building and the tower, correct?
Yes, you can, right below this Justice Center label, there would be a connector from the MUD building to the tower. And we'll show an image of that. This is a stacking diagram. So there's parking for the judges below the tower, community and public lobby space, 2 levels of courts, and then a level of attorney and court administration. And then this is both public defender and county attorneys we have labeled as attorney. And then for the youth center, again, a lobby and office level on Howard Street, 2 levels of housing and activity space for the kids, and then a recreation space, gymnasium, and an outdoor space on the 4th level. You can see this level 3 to level 3 is how the kids could move from a housing unit straight to the courts to reduce that time and the traumatic experience. The other housing level would come up an elevator to one of the 2 courts levels. Mm-hmm. We have a little more detail on that. And then this is looking at the courtyard in Patrick. This is a connector that has some color, maybe an opportunity for some public art between the MUD building on the right and the tower on the left. Then what you see above is a row of glass, and that's actually windows into the housing unit in the youth center beyond. But this, we think we could create a really nice public courtyard in between these buildings. And I think you've probably seen these images before, but the MUD building, a very nice existing building. We've done a physical assessment on that, and they've kept it in really in good shape. The OPPD building is on the far left across 17th Street, and then the new tower. We're beginning to look at the idea of having some color in the glass. We have some kind of inspirational images we'll show. We haven't developed that yet, but I think that would be something else that the kids in the family would relate to. It takes the formality of the Hall of Justice and brings that down a bit. So we'll talk about that as we go forward. And then the youth center, the glass on Howard Street is the office space for the youth center, and then 2 levels of housing, and then the top level is the outdoor courtyard above, but the wall goes up to about 12 feet. So, you know, the kids have privacy, and then the white box is the gymnasium space. And we're looking at some options on that as well. So this just shows that the idea of having a simple connection for the kids to move instead of being a half a day or longer transition for what may be a 15-minute appearance in court. Now it's a 5-minute walk, and they don't have to be handcuffed and shackled. So that's one big idea, but the other, as I said, having all of these services co-located provides more efficiencies to reduce the amount of time that the kids are in detention by having improved communication. In any process, communication is important. This allows people to communicate. They just need to walk over to an office. They don't have to drive and set up an appointment. They can call on the phone, walk, have casual conversations, casual interactions. We found these in other facilities to be very important in improving process, and we know the same thing will happen here. This shows in a little more detail. These are eight room modules with common space centered between the 2 modules. So in this block you have 8 rooms on the top, 8 rooms on the bottom, outdoor space on the right, multi-purpose space on the left, and then common space in the center. This is some medical services, and on the next level above are classrooms and computer labs and those kinds of support areas. And then the walk over to elevators, if they're on a different level than the court, they have their own elevators that go up, and how they enter the court is separate from the public, which the public is, the lobby is on the left side of this tower, on the west side overlooking the plaza, and then the courtrooms are the larger rooms. So the public would come in from the left, and the kids would come in from the right. The judges also have internal elevators to go up to their chambers, so it's separate. And then this level is large community conference space for communities, community space for community services on the entrance level of the MUD building, and then the probation in this scheme are above. Trying to make it, again, convenient for the kids and the families.
Bruce? Is this available for us to be able to, like, a hard copy or see it online?
Yes.
Because
and we've made it available through Diane. I don't know, Diane, is it posted?
It is posted on the county's website. You can get there either through the county clerk's website, or if you go to the county board page, there's the Development Corporation site that you can click on.
I email you, could you like send me that link?
I could do it that way too.
That would be great.
That's fine, yeah.
I can't go, when you zoom in.
Yeah,
now, it's
yeah,
really hard to see
yeah,
any of
I
this
follow.
detail.
And-
So these are actually the 4 courts. And then we, again, on the plaza side, we have meeting rooms for the families and attorneys outside of the courtrooms. And then the judges' chambers on the right side or the east side on 17th Street. And then this shows a layout for probation offices, more of a test of the space. And then another housing unit on the south. So we talk a lot about trauma-informed design, and this is the next stage where we try to make it more of a calming environment, restorative environment. It's not punishment. Being in detention, it should not be intended to be considered punishment. So we use materials. We try to introduce wood. These are wood doors. We introduce daylight. You can see this is a view to the east. But each room also has daylight and borrow light into the space, the common space, using colors. And we've talked about quality of lighting. It makes a big difference. The quality of acoustics makes a big difference. And when we do this for the kids that are in the space, it also helps the staff that's in the space. It brings kind of the level down for everybody. And that's what we found in other environments. You know, if we're trying to do it in a healthcare for patients, it also helps the staff and the family that are in the space to bring the level down of drama or trauma. They're similar.
Mhm.
We want to reduce the drama.
Oh,
And,
well.
and then the individual rooms, large size. If you're familiar with the existing, they're I think 3 square feet, about 12 inches by 3 feet slit, and this is probably 35 square feet, 5 by 7 or 4 by 7, so 25 square feet. It's a big difference in the size of daylight. And then the outdoor space, this shows the height of the perimeter. So it's enclosed in a sense from the street. There's still some perforated or some perforated metal or scrim to allow some screen views up. But idea of getting natural nature, whether it's flowers or grass or whatever we can achieve there. There's a big misconception. At the youth center today, it's surrounded by green space, but they go into a space about as big as this room, and it's concrete. And there's no opportunity to experience nature. And nature is also something that is healing or brings down stress. So this would be a pretty significant move. I know in some cases it's been downplayed, but all of the facilities that we visited, it's concrete or it's artificial turf. You have to understand that the building is the secure perimeter, so the kids aren't going outside of the building. There's some misconception there.
How big is that green space?
It's about 5,000 square feet.
And that's all grass?
It's not all grass. It would have some hard surface and grass. We would work on the design of this to develop it. So then two examples. We visited D.C. in Washington, a similar demographic as Douglas County. It's a city, but it's or whatever it is, the D.C. here, district. But it's about 500,000 population. Baltimore's about 500,000 or 600,000. Johnson County in Kansas City. We visited Hennepin, which is Minneapolis, which is 1.2 million. We had people from King County come in, which is Seattle, which is also 2.5 million, I think. And then Ramsey County, which is St. Paul. All of those are an urban site. All of those, with the exception of Johnson County, are co-located services. And if Johnson County would say we wish we had the services co-located, but all the other ones are co-located. Ramsey and Hennepin have been doing an outstanding job. You can see 1.2 million people, and their average daily population is 45. And their length of stay is low, but it depends on how that's calculated, and we're working on that at Douglas County. Ramsey is 538,000, and their average daily population is 24, which is comparable to Douglas County's of 500,000 or 600,000. And I'm not saying we should have targets, but looking at all the other ones and the ones we've talked to, Douglas County is high on their average daily population, and everybody asks what's going on and why is it so high. So that first slide on all the programs, that's what we're trying to achieve. And a lot of it is improving the process and having alternative programs. So I'm not saying this is a target, but I think this is achievable, and they've been working on this a long time, but there's a lot of discussion going on, and I think even in the Chin report, Karen Chin believed this is probably more in the range we should be. So that's the basics of the design. We can talk more about the exterior, but I'll let Don Molman talk about the budget that we're designing to $114 million bond.
Don?
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning. I won't go through every line item. We've done that a couple of times now in public meetings. Last 501c3 meeting, JCDC meeting, we did that. We did that at the county board meeting. So I think really one of the key things to recognize here, all the discussion related to the youth center with the philanthropy from the Sherwood Foundation. You can see in the construction cost for the youth center is about $27 million to build. $5 million of that will be actually separate funding that comes into the project, which helps us then net out to the bond issue bottom line total of $114 million. So the big line up there, the $91 million, constitutes the site preparation. So that would be certainly the demolition of the parking lots and regrading and taking care of all of that. We do take down then the parking garage that's existing in the annex, which is on the south side of the MUD building. So when Bruce showed the slide for the MUD building, that's the original building footprint, if you will. And that gives the opportunity then to open up the courtyard and create a new connector from really the public sidewalks from the MUD building and direct connection into the Justice Tower. There are, I should mention also then in that 1B category, the Justice Tower, the MUD building, and the Skywalk, roughly $65 million. The Skywalk, and we've seen that on the renderings, but that's about 100 feet. And the beauty of that is it connects directly from the Justice Center directly to the existing courthouse. And again, the traffic ways and the security issues can be managed much better, with that connectivity. There's, non-construction costs, so we have the telecom, audiovisual, security allowances, The non-construction costs includes furnishings, as I mentioned, we talked about that. That's not furnishing every office new. I think there's opportunity to plan and budget for that over the next 3 years. But certainly takes care of the public spaces and a lot of area and that kind of thing. And then in the non-construction, professional services, you can see that includes HDR, Burlington. There's a lot of support independent parties, for specific studies. There are code requirements that have to be done independently. So as you look at 3C, the geotechnical, that's all of the earthwork. And, special inspections would include concrete, steel testing. Again, those are done by the labs, and by code they need to be independent from the contractor and from the architect. We do have other costs. Probably the biggest number on that is the builder's risk, which in all likelihood the owner will carry the builder's risk as they typically do. We will also probably seek proposals just to get the best value associated with that when the time comes. And then we maintain about 5% contingency, particularly at this early stage, which takes us to that $114 million bond issue.
Very good. Any questions for Don on the budget?
Yeah, just on the budget itself, because I've been hearing that some larger numbers as far as our project is concerned. I think, can you tell us what type of contract we'd be looking to enter into to at least guard against any inflation or cost controls that we would have as part of the budgetary process?
Once we engage in Kiewit, has been definitely participatory to this at this point. So they have done quantity surveys on measurements of the buildings for really the design that's been done to this point and proposed to this point. Those are budget numbers. We've had an independent estimate done also, which we will continue to do at each of the phases. Kiewit's contract will in essence be established as a guaranteed maximum price, the GMP. And then the other items, other than those top lines for construction, will be managed independently within the confines of the control budget. So from beginning to end, this will be a design to budget process. So we're comfortable with the scope as it's defined. It is a process, and we'll go to market competitively. We've had numerous conversations about that. But holistically, George, I think the key thing to your point is that we will manage to the $114 million, and actually, if you add the $5 million to that, just so everybody understands clearly, we'll be driven to a $119 million project budget. But $5 million from Sherwood helps the bond issue side of that to 114. So the project team's committed to this. We've worked together in the past. Responsibility of Burlington is to provide the independence on behalf of the 501c3, the county and the city and the public, to make sure we're getting the best value for each dollar spent. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, and let me flip the lights back on now.
I have just a couple things, and this is, we talked about the introduction of color or pattern in the glass. This is a project in Dallas, and that pattern on the glass that it looks like a tree limb is all built from names. In this case, this county project, and whether you donated $1 or $1 million, your name was on the donor wall. So
cool.
That graphic is made up of just the different colored names. So that's kind of what we may be thinking about. This is a little more we probably wouldn't be this direct on it. It would be more of an abstract, but this is again using color on glass, and you can do it with fins, add a slight color. So these are the things that we're beginning to play with, and I wanted to kind of get that out as this cool. Happens to be a skywalk, but it changes the character. Yeah. But it gives the importance of a civic building in a different sense.
I like that. Okay.
Have we determined, is there a projected timeline from now to when we start construction?
Yeah, there is conversations. The purchase agreement with MED defined that they would be vacated entirely from the premises on April 15th. So in essence, from that time forward, we would go through the design, we would go through some pre-bidding, we would be prepared to do that. Most recently, and again, I'm not sure how much this has been talked about, but there is some opportunity they may leave sooner. That would be helpful for us because we've looked at this from the standpoint of being able to complete the MUD building ahead of the tower and the new center by about a year. So that would be helpful, I think, just to get some acclimation and some moving, completion of that element sooner than the rest of the project. So that would mean a start in about November.
November of this year?
Yes, sir. The mobilization on the side. Otherwise, it would probably be in about February of next year. And then we would be targeting for completion of the entire project in the third quarter of 2022. So that allows overall for about a 34-month build. But again, if we can deliver the MED building sooner, I think that would be a benefit. Just to get that so we can start the movement. Because in these kinds of projects, you go through the churn, you've got to vacate space and, navigate through that. So, but that'll be an ongoing discussion. And again, I think there's some economies in that. I would mention also what that would allow us to do if we can go in November, thereabouts. We can start tower, the youth center, and MUD at the same time, which would be very helpful rather than trying to navigate around some things for the build. And I think there could very well be some economies in being able to do that rather than all of the interim conditions associated with keeping that MUD building open just for MUD, if you see what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My only reason for asking the question, well, two reasons. One, I was kind of dovetailing off of what George had just talked about expenses and how those expenses
Sure.
go over a longer period of time. The other reason I asked the question is because once you start any kind of construction, whether it's demolition, whatever it is, once you start it, it ends some of the silly conversation that we've been listening to for about the last year and a half now.
Right. No question about that.
Well,
The consolidated thing.
Mark, I'm just,
Bruce,
that's the reason why we.
Not to interrupt
I know.
Bruce, but the one thing too that's been brought up, I think, is that by having a consolidated site for the whole program, there isn't any interim thing about trying to house juveniles during a remodeling project of 42nd Street as an example, because talk about interim and navigation through that would all have to be carefully phased and thought about. And what do you do with the kids if you're trying to work in the same house that they live in now?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll also have a series of meetings with the people that have used the building, the attorneys and the judges. We're not done with that design process.
Okay.
We add more and more detail as we go along. We have a pretty good understanding of their needs, but it's not 100% signed off yet because we kind of interrupted that when we changed sites.
Mm-hmm.
But that will continue, and that'll be about another 2 or 3 month schedule, I think. Right, wait.
And Madam Chair, in terms of the flyers that will go out about all of the meetings, how is that going to be structured? Will that be structured where that we're talking about the design and we're talking about, okay.
Yeah.
And so there'll be, some of us will be in.
Right. So we'll do it the same kind of way we did it today, and then there'll be a question and answer period at the end where the public can come up and ask questions about what they saw.
Okay. Probably be a good idea to as many board members as possible to attend those.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have, Claire?
Well,
Commissioner Drew?
Couple of questions, if I may. First off, who's doing the public hearings? Is it the JCDC or the Douglas County Board?
It's the 501c3.
Okay. Wow. So Douglas County's never having any kind of
I don't know that
town hall with public hearing.
It doesn't say?
No, it does not
So,
really say, it doesn't say JCDC.
My other question.
Okay, then that's my, sorry, Claire. Claire,
Until it does.
my bad. It's the board.
Okay, good, good. My other question, last week Commissioners Boyle and Kraft and I came in to meet with Bruce Carpenter to address, among other issues, was Commissioner Boyle's concern that this isn't going to last 50 years. I mean, it's not going to meet all of our needs for 50 years. When you look at, the legislature's already talking about 7th and 8th juvenile judges. To think that in the next 50 years, that's all the juvenile judges we're going to get, might not be accurate based on our history. Commissioner Boyle's concern was, do we have any room for future growth? And where the conversation seemed to go was the possibility of building the tower so that at a later date it could be added on to, either 2 or 4 additional stories added to the top if a space crunch does develop down the road, to at least have that option out there. I came back in Monday for our meeting to get the answer and found out that the meeting was canceled, my meeting, without telling me. And Mark was a little disappointed in that. But I'm still hoping to get an answer to that.
Yeah.
I know
So-
we're tight on expenses and everything.
So we did, our structural engineers looked at that, and I think, I don't want to misquote this, I think it would add about 30 tons of steel to the structure to have, to add 2 to 4 floors. And so we can price that. They went through the analysis of what it would require if it's thicker sections of, the columns primarily. That's what they looked at. And so we can identify the cost. It may be a couple $100,000 in that range. I don't know. I wouldn't take that. Wouldn't take that as a real number, but we'll evaluate it.
All right.
And we talked about, there's a mechanical penthouse on the roof that would stay in place, so it would become kind of an interstitial floor,
Right.
and then the floors built above. We have done that. We just recently completed a project in Norfolk where they doubled the height. I think we added another 6 floors on top of 6 or 8 floors. It's not, I wouldn't say it's easy,
Of course.
but it's possible, and we can identify the real cost of what that would be.
What comes to my mind, would be, if we know that would be a desire going in, we could actually bid that as an alternate.
Right.
And add alternates, so that we would have competitive pricing once we get all the bids in. A decision would have to be made pretty early on, because as Bruce describes it, that's going to affect the deep foundations, it's
Right.
going to affect the steel, it's going to affect everything.
Perfect.
But, we want to craft that very carefully, and I think Bruce hit the key thing too, the interstitial space to house now mechanical floor. There would be some costs associated with that even at the top, so we could build over the top of that and still get the air movement and everything we would need on the mechanical floor.
So,
But we can figure those kinds of things out if that's the direction and the desire. So.
I would like to see that.
yeah. The other thing too, and we talked about this a little bit, is we're going to be vacating space in this building and the Hall of Justice. So there'll be some master planning, what's available for future growth. So I think the idea is to give you the best information to make an educated decision at the time when we start building. That would be what we'd want, provide you the information to make that decision as the board or 501c3. So,
Thank you.
Let me, if I can dovetail off your question again as well, too. Do the other counties that you showed pictures of, what has been, because some of them have been doing it significantly longer than where we are at this point, what has been their, do we know what their, if we're successful in doing the things we want to do with behavioral health and other things, have they had a need for, or have they had any increases in judges or anything, or have they? Because it seemed like to me, if we're going to be successful with this, I don't know.
We won't need, exactly.
8 or 9 more judges.
Exactly.
It's hard.
So
crime has been going down, and the population in detention has been going down. Even in Douglas County, both of those numbers have been going down at about a rate of 7.5% per year for the population in detention, while the population in the county's been going up slightly at about 2% a year, maybe, if we're lucky. So I don't. They've built their facilities a couple of decades ago, and I don't know what they planned initially, so I can't answer the question on
I'll look
judges.
it up. Yeah, if you could look that up, because because it would seem like to me, if we're successful in doing what we want to do, in terms of movement, quick movement, and quickly, adjudicating and getting, kids services and so forth, I don't know that there's going to be that kind of
I think
right.
that I think we're talking about.
Ramsey
it's possible if we're not successful. But
Ramsey and Hennepin, I think, would be good models to look at because they've been at it for quite a while. So we'll be looking at a long time frame to see what the judge count has been. So I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, because I think Mike and Mark and I think you guys have a good question. I just think we ought to, we've got areas in place where we can go and look and see what their history has been over the 20, 25-year period that they've been in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what that looks like, and then that might give us a better answer than to make assumptions that 50 years from now we're going to need to expand.
So Denton County, which is Fort Worth, is a larger population. They have 4 judges, and that was a question that came up in our office. It seemed like, I'm not saying one's better than the other, I'm just stating the facts that a county has fewer judges. So ours are state appointed, and theirs may be appointed by the county or county judges, I don't know. So we need to take all of that.
It's also the programming piece of it too, with alternatives.
Yeah.
And I agree. I mean, the goal is to work ourselves out
of a job. That's what I'm hoping we do.
That's right. But I think as a member of this board and our fiduciary duty, it'd be good to have that information. If it's not that much more expensive to have that option 30 years in the future, it'd be good to have that answer to that question.
I agree with the direction we hope to see things go, but when I came on the county board, there was 1 full-time, 1 part-time juvenile judge.
Wow.
So.
It's also philosophical, systematic differences that also have aligned to that happening, and so that mindset, I think we're trying to get back to the other way. And again, that has a lot to do with the programming and processes that we put in place.
And that was 50 years ago.
I was getting ready to say you walk with Moses.
There is one more slide that we just got that is kind of interesting, and I don't. This is more about changing the trajectory of the kids to keep them out of staying in the correction system. That's what it's about, and making them more productive and better citizens for themselves. But there is an economic benefit as well to having them be productive citizens and not being in the correction system. And so we've asked Ernie Goss to look at what that number might be, the economic impact. So the bond is a 30-year bond, and we identified $30 million of that towards the youth center. That's kind of a round number. And they took a projection out 20 years if we're able to have more kids out of the correction, which this is a national movement too.
Right.
So, we just picked a couple numbers. Today there's 80 kids, and we could get down to 40 kids in detention or change that trajectory. it turns out to be 164 million in benefit to the community. And based on a bond cost, and this is the interest rate and other things related to the bond, that over 30 years goes up to 39 million, the interest rate. So for every dollar spent, you get a return of $4. And these are conservative. If you extended this out to the life of the bond, the numbers get almost unbelievably large. So Ernie was pretty conservative on this study, but this will be something that'll be a public document.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? There is no action.
One comment. I do want to thank the board members on the development corporations, also the county commissioners. We haven't talked about wearing multiple hats, but the elected officials, especially, you know this. But the single best thing you can do for this project is this board. And put your project hat on. Do all the legwork you've got to do with your constituencies and with your other governing body. But that makes a huge difference for the project. So I just wanted to thank the county and the Public Building Commission for doing it this way. It makes a lot of sense. But I also want to acknowledge and thank the efforts that our elected officials in particular are going to ensure a successful project. It's worth it.
And tomorrow, just so that people know, just so you all know, just for your information, tomorrow, Preston Love Jr. has a thing that he does at the end of the month, at the end of each month, called Black City Hall at the Emery's Cafe at Fairdale Village. I'll be there tomorrow, and I'll be speaking about the Juvenile Justice Center, this waste contract. And landlord registry.
So no plastic bags.
I decided I'd stay away from the plastic.
So it's going to be a short meeting.
The other three are going to take long enough.
You just picked the easy three.
I picked the easy three.
You'll be in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
hey.
That was my report.
Well, we have no action items at this meeting, so we will be adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.